Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. So it's my turn and pleasure to introduce you.
Awesome. Happy to be
Okay.
here.
Yeah, so happy that you are participating. And I'm going to take just a few seconds to do also the welcoming part in Spanish because Silvia and Susana are Argentinians, as I am. So, bienvenidas. Pipi, Susi, estoy feliz de que puedan estar compartiendo el escenario y estar participando y sumando a las comunidades que hacemos este 24 horas. Así que muchísimas gracias por participar.
No, gracias por invitarnos.
Sí, gracias.
Okay.
Hablar en inglés.
No worries, it's going to be like you will not notice that you're speaking in English. So don't worry. Don't worry at all.
You're going to black out, Pipi. It's fine.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I started speaking Spanish. You translate, please.
I will.
Okay, so welcome to this third edition. I'm handing you the mic. You are the host. Enjoy the ride.
Okay.
Susie,
So
can you share the presentation?
Christina is going to share.
Christina, okay.
But while she does, I want to thank 24 Hours UX. I attended last year, and it is such a dream to be here today. So thanks a lot for inviting me, especially as not being 100% a UX designer, but an accessibility specialist. I really like this opportunity to talk to a room full of, people from design.
I am having a permissions issue with Google Chrome. Susie, did you want to try sharing? It's going to make me quit.
Here, let me know if you see it. Okay, so.
Okay, welcome to our talk, and thank you so much for attending. Today, we will be talking about one of our favorite topics, accessibility. We name it this talk, Accessibility is My Passion. Just thinking about the design is my passion meme. And the way we visual designers perceive it is much like how a screen reader user perceive our designs. It's not the best experience. Okay, so I'm Silvia Marquez, but you can call me Pipi. And with Susi Pallero, we are the co-founders of Dalat. Dalat is a community of accessibility professionals and people interested in the subject that are from Latin America. We share and create information about accessibility in Spanish. Today, we choose to speak in English because we want to share the scene with Christina Halladay. She is a talented designer from New York, and we are very happy to have here. So, as I mentioned, I'm Pipi. I'm a UX designer and accessibility specialist. So now, Susie, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Bibi. Well, my name is Susana Pallero. I am from Argentina too. I am currently living in Turin, in Italy, and I'm an accessibility solutions specialist. I am, as Bibi mentioned, the co-founder of Dalat, this community. I am an invited subject matter expert at the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, and I am a member of the Silver Task Force in the W3C, where we are writing the next oncoming guidelines. So another thing that I wanted to add is that we chose to speak in English because we want to share with other regions the perspective of our region too, and we understand that maybe Spanish is not the language that everybody knows better than English. English is more popular these days, so we are going to make our possible to try to bring you our ideas, even though we are not native speakers. Christina?
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Christina, I'm the UX director for a global design and development partner called ITX. I've been in the exciting field of UX for over 10 years and have been so lucky to work with Susie and Pipi and Dalat over the past couple of years. It's been a really fun and enlightening experience for me. It's also really transformed my thinking and the way our organization is approaching tech problems too. So hope that you learned something new today.
Okay, so let's go to our agenda, Pipi.
Yeah. Our agenda for today will have 3 parts. First, we will talk about what is a digital accessibility. Second, we will talk about what is not digital accessibility. And the last, the main topic, that will be checking some of the errors we designers usually make when creating our designs. So the question is, what is digital accessibility?
Sorry, I'm hearing you.
¿No me escuchas?
Yeah, now I do.
¿Sí? So the question is, what is digital accessibility? Okay. Digital accessibility refers to the characteristics a digital product or a service must have in order to make it available for all people. What is important about this definition is that every digital product and service can be used by all people, regardless of disabilities or impairments. If it can be used, it's because the product is not accessible or the technology has not been invented yet.
Okay, so let's see some differences between disabilities and impairments. Disabilities are inherent to people. Usually they are part of their identities, okay? So that's why we make this difference from impairments that are also characteristics that derive from the context of use or temporary impairments, okay? Usually, I don't know if you ever read something about accessibility, you must be familiar with this picture of Microsoft with the permanent, temporal, and environmental disabilities or something like that. That is not correct anymore, right? We only call disabilities to those that are inherent to people, the permanent ones, and impairments, those that are, temporary or derived from the context of use. So both of them can be physical, intellectual, or emotional. But what's most important about it is that these characteristics are never the barrier, okay? The barrier is in the product. It is within the service we designed, the product we designed, the environment per se, and it can be removed through accessibility. We will check an example in case of a hearing impairment. We can have a disability in the case of a person with deafness. We can have a contextual impairment in the case of a loud environment, for example, a bar. And we can have a temporary impairment that could be a person what happens to have an ear infection. In this case, let's say that we take the accessible decision to add subtitles like captions to our videos. These 3 kind of users in 2 different contexts will be able to access the information that we're trying to convey through the video. And not only that, but our capabilities vary throughout our lives, okay? As we age, we acquire disabilities. We start to have hearing impairments, motor disabilities, visual impairments, and then we can conclude that our capabilities vary throughout our lives. There's this research done by Nielsen Norman Group that is super interesting, that it concludes that the testing with middle-aged user has shown that between the ages of 25 and 60, people's ability to use websites declines 0.8% per year. This is a lot. It is almost 1% per year. That means that I've lost more than 10% already, okay? But we're inviting you in this chat to change the way we present information, because aging is natural. Actually, if we're lucky, we age, right? So are we going to do something as designers to prevent people from aging? Or we're going to reinterpret this data and say that the usability of current design patterns and current implementation declines by 0.8% per year for people between the ages of 25 and 60. Accessibility is a design challenge. Okay, it's not easy. We have just checked that 100% of the world will be exposed in any moment of their lives to an impairment. So it's not easy to design for all people. It is a challenge, and exclusion is a result of the failure to meet that challenge.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what is not digital accessibility. Let's flip this and look at it a different way. So accessibility is not usability. This is an important point to sink in. So let's just say that again, accessibility is not usability. If you're familiar with the WCAG, you know there's a lot of overlap and common themes between the two, but they are different. So let's dig into this. First thing to think about is how we evaluate or measure accessibility and usability. For accessibility, the WCAG, or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, are used as a standard method. When it comes to usability, I'm sure as designers, many of you are familiar with Nielsen's 10 usability heuristics, which is often used as a standard method of evaluating usability. And just by definition, the intent of accessibility is to make a digital product available or accessible across different contexts. And that, of course, takes into account disabilities and impairments, which Susie was describing earlier. The intent of usability is to make a product more intuitive and more efficient. So if we look at an example of this, making something accessible would be making all of the page elements readable and operable for screen reader users. So the elements are going to be properly announced, they're available. But if we take it a step further and think about usability, we would make that navigation consistent across the site for a screen reader and easy to use, not just functional. So Susie's got a little story to share with us here.
Some weeks ago, I was at this Wikimedia Foundation talk talking about accessible alternative text. And if you're familiar with the WCAG, you know that to add an alternative text, it must be informational and it must be descriptive. It was about these mortars and how they are used, the article we were working on. And the accessible alternative text that was proposed by the people was paleolithic artifact. It does describe the image. It does inform what it actually is. But if I am a screen reader user and I want to actually know how it works, why we add images, for examples? Because we want people to imagine how that works, to know exactly how it would feel like. And as a screen reader user, I may want to know that too. So we came with this new approach and we created this other alternative text that says artifact composed of a large stone that contains the grain and another smaller stone that when pressed against the large one grounds the grain. This is compliant with the WCAG. Both of them are compliant with the alternative text guideline. But in the second, we are providing a better user experience and equal access to the quality of that information.
All right. So we're going to talk about some common errors that we as designers make. Accessibility is highly nuanced and the standards are always evolving. So it can be hard to know when we're making a mistake. We're going to talk about 3. This is our first one, and how usability comes into play as well. So error number 1, of course, doing nothing at all, right? Not considering accessibility. We can't truly call a product usable if there are people that cannot use it. So that's first.
And as an accessibility professional that has been for 10 years already in the field, I became across several clients that didn't want to adopt accessibility, that they were more into fixing some things that were demanded for, and that's it, and just letting them go away until they are inaccessible again. So it is super important that we address that accessibility is not a feature, it is not a nice to have, it is not a best practice, it is not you being good to the world, it is a human right. And it is recognized by the Human Rights Universal Declaration. And of course, we want to make our works and go every day to the office and do the right thing. And we definitely won't work by doing something wrong against the human right? We don't want to stop complying with that. So think about accessibility as a core part of any product, right? As you wouldn't deliver any design into production with issues, with functional issues, then you wouldn't send to production an inaccessible product.
Yeah, 100%. Error number 2, considering accessibility at the wrong time. So again, while accessibility and usability are related, they do have their own objectives and outcomes. So there's a couple things to consider when we're talking about timing. Common issue number 1 is thinking about accessibility after usability. We don't want to add on accessibility after the fact, right? And of course, every project has different starting points and scenarios. You might be inheriting a digital product or some legacy code, but as much as you can, you want to shift left. If you've heard of that concept before, essentially it means integrate accessibility as early as possible into the process. And on the, oh, go ahead.
I wanted to add something.
Yeah.
We always talk, when we talk about accessibility, we talk about shifting to the left, but we are saying like shift to the left of the left, because sometimes when we think about shifting to the left on design, we think, okay, I will take into account color contrast, while doing my designs, or the structure, considering the WCAGs or wherever the application of them are. But it's like even before that, before that moment, you must create a different experience.
Absolutely. And we also don't want to consider accessibility at the same time or the same priority as usability, right? If your product is not accessible, you really can't evaluate its usability, right? There's certain people that cannot use it, and the line between accessibility issues and usability issues are going to start to blur. So as Susie said, related to shift left, like accessibility comes first, right? Our goal should really be to integrate accessibility into all phases of the process, definitely early on. Just to list some examples here from the design process, like when you're identifying mental models, talking about personas, include users with disabilities and impairments at that stage as much as possible. Once you've done that, then you can ensure that the UI, the mockups that you're designing, whatever specs you have are WCAG conformant. And at that point, then you can evaluate the product's usability. So something important to understand is that accessibility conformance does not necessarily equate to usability for people with disabilities or impairments, right? Checking the boxes on the WCAG, while it's helpful, does not mean a great user experience. This was a really important mindset shift for me. Conformance is really focused on the technical piece of things, but we've all had the experience of using something that worked. Maybe it was functional, but it was a bad experience, right? It was slow, confusing, frustrating, whatever, not enjoyable. So we need to really be thinking about the whole experience So just to recap, error 1 was, not doing anything at all. Error 2 was not including accessibility at the right time. And our third error, which is related to the concept we just talked about, is having a biased view of usability. So we're going to talk a little bit about usability heuristics. Of course, as we mentioned, the Nielsen-Norman group heuristics are classic. Everybody knows these. We all learn about them. We all use them. Super valuable, still relevant today, but they haven't actually changed much since 1994. And obviously the world has, and it's constantly changing. So we really need to, as designers, be thinking about these foundational guidelines, principles, our tools, and expand on them and evolve them. If you're familiar with the heuristics, the second one on the list is match between the system and the real world. This covers things like speaking the user's language, using concepts that are familiar to them, following real world conventions.
Okay, that's the main point, Christina. What is the real world, right?
What is it?
Which world? Which world? The real world is different for everyone, right? The way we perceive it, we operate, we go through the world, the education we could access, and our capabilities makes our realities different. The way that what is real for me and how I experience something physical as a blind person is not the same as the way or the interface that you are used to manage or use as a visible user, right? So it is super important to understand that it's not only one reality or only one way to perceive reality, and that it can be completely different according to our diversities.
Yeah, and another question is, and when? Because our world varies even according to our generations. Let's see an example with a video.
We brought you this video that I hope you liked. It is my daughter. It is my baby daughter of 3 years old.
Yeah, in this video we see Diana. She is Susie's 3 years old daughter. She's trying to buy a juice in a vending machine. She has a 5 euros bill and is trying to scan it in front of a green light that is intended to receive credit cards or electronic payments. This was her first. This was her first time using a vending machine. Her mental model is related to the digital products she uses every day, like a tablet or a cell phone. So for her, these machines would be easier to use if it was designed taking the digital world as the model, because that is her mental model of how things are supposed to work. If you can see, another action she tries is touching the glass as it were a screen. After she touches the wheel, trying to associate both, or dragging and dropping. On this vending machine, there is not a button representing each product, just codes and numbers, and she doesn't recognize it as an input. She tries to interact with the machine interface as she does with the games and activities she usually plays on her tablet. That is what she considers the native way of interacting with machine interface. There are newer vending machines that have selection buttons on each product, and that's you'd have worked for Diana, at least for choosing. So reality has an expiration date, and it is constantly changing. Okay, let's jump on the rule number 4, consistency and standards. The rule says users should not have to wonder whether different words, situation, or actions mean the same thing. follow platforms and industry conventions. We are all familiar with this concept of internal and external consistency. And we follow this convention and maintain these patterns when we design. But we should wonder, which conventions should we keep? Following consistency is fine, but not when it perpetuates exclusion and poor user experience for historically segregated people.
Now let's see an example of this, okay? Here in the screen we have a menu. We have a regular menu, actually a pretty good one because we don't have a lot of elements. And as visual users, we without disabilities or impairments, we perceive it like that. If we click on one of them, let's say features, it will display a submenu with all the rest of the options. And it makes sense, because it's like you have 4 drawers and you have a lot of items in each one of them. They make sense to be together. So we could call it a good pattern. But what happens to the screen reader users or keyboard navigators? They will perceive the same menu just as you can see it in the screen, okay, in a sequential way. In a sequential way that lists everything and provides you with some feedback on how it functions. But best case scenario, we have an accessible menu 100%, and this will be the experience. The experience will be a list of things. And that takes me to the next one, recognition rather than recall. How can we minimize the user's memory load by making elements, actions, and options visible? It's interesting because they are using the word visible. And if we perceive this menu, we think, well, they are available, they are there, they are visible, it's clear, it's not that long. And even though not all of our users are use visibility, And the sequence is really important when talking about sequential navigation. The user shouldn't have to remember information from one part of the interface to another. And here we have, in the screen, you can see, we have it's called simple registration. And it has a field with the password, and when you have at its right the button that will enter that password, but you have the instructions right after, okay? So what would happen if I'm navigating this with the screen reader? It would be sequential, and instructions would be read after the field was read and that I already created and added my password, right? Let's say that you do it accessible. So what you do is connect, in the code, you programmatically add this to the field so it is announced at the same time than the field. But screen reader users are not the only users we have. So we have a user that use a magnifier that is for low vision users. That means that tiny part of the screen will take all the screen. So maybe they will only recognize this part of password and the input, and that's it. And they will try once and again until it gets the error, trying to add that password. And when scrolling down or navigating forward, they will find the instructions because they are not visible at the same time under a magnifier that can, enlarge the content at least, 30 times, right? So in this case, the best practice would be to provide the instructions prior to the field. In that case, you're making sure that information is available prior to the user thinking about the password that they want to add. And that will be in an order that doesn't matter if they programmatically connected it to the field. It will be announced before the field and will be recognized by all the kind of users I have.
All right. And that 6 heuristic also says that information should be visible or easily retrievable. So another critical consideration is that's also related to sequence is that whenever we display new or additional content triggered by user interaction, for example, the user made a selection or something like that, it needs to be presented in the right order as well. Remember, the screen reader is going to go through elements sequentially. So let's take a look at an example of that. So here we are looking at a screenshot from a current airline website from Argentina. In this view, the user is filling out a form for a flight reservation. Now they have the ability to add their phone number in the bottom row, and they can add more than one phone number by clicking that text down below that says add a phone number if they want to. Okay, so let's imagine that the user decides they want to add a second phone number, and they click that. The result is that the second phone number row is added below the first one, and that might seem standard from a UI standpoint, right? Well, there's a few issues here. First issue is that the screen reader is going to remain positioned on that add phone number button or link, and that's located now at the bottom of the second phone number field. So that means that the screen reader is not going to recognize that there's new content placed above. The second issue that we see here is that they're using the exact same label for phone number 2 and phone number 1. So how do you think a non-visual user is going to distinguish between those two rows? So the ideal solution here is having unique labels or IDs for those, and that the new content be added after the add phone number button or link so that it's going to be read by the screen reader after that selection is made.
And Christina, let's say that I have this because, in this super inaccessible digital world we have, screen reader users have managed, to find ways to find information and interact with information. So sometimes, because it's not usual, you always navigate with the screen reader forward, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say that they navigate back. They say like, well, maybe they didn't position this forward. I will go back, and they have to go, field by field, and they will hear again the very same labels and content. So they may just think, no, nothing appeared. It is the exact same, fields I read before this element. And if you have the same labels, that means that you cannot associate the information to a screen reader to let them know, hey, read it again, because even though it's behind, visually, you can change the code to make it read it because it's appeared. But if you have the same names, the assistive technology cannot recognize which one of the two you're talking about. If you tell the assistive technology, read phone number again, the assistive technology will be like, which phone number I have to, and they have the exact same name.
Yeah, so hopefully you can see these are just, a couple of examples here, but how important sequence really is to the experience for many people, right? And it's important to think about this because we all see these patterns being used all the time. Like, these are common patterns. So we really need to be thinking about the choices that we're making. And these are easy things that we can do in our design work to mitigate these issues. Next, we're going to be talking a little bit about immediate context, right? So when we say immediate context, what we mean is the information that a person has access to in one moment in time, right? Like, what information do I have right now in this moment? As designers, we understand how important context is to decision making, right? It's so important. So to use a metaphor for how to think about this in design, we can consider lighting. Does your design work under the bright light of day and by flashlight? So if someone has a more limited view, hence the flashlight, what is that experience like? Can they accomplish their objectives? Do they have the information they need to make the decision? And I know we're asking you a lot of questions today, but hey, we're designers. That's our job. But these are things that we need to be thinking about, right? We don't all have the same reality. So we're going to do a quick little exercise to help illustrate this concept further. Okay. So let's take the navigation menu we discussed earlier in the talk, right? We're looking at 28 menu items right now on a page. Relatively small website considering just 21 items. We've seen larger ones, obviously. And we're going to simulate a screen reader navigation experience. And let me be clear that this is an accessible experience. Like, this is accessible navigation. It's conformant. This is how the screen reader would announce it. Features, button, expanded. Email marketing link. Paid advertising link. SEO and SEM link. Funnel optimization link. Content marketing link. Social media link. Use cases, button, expanded. Design teams link. Marketing teams link. Support teams link. Development teams link. Don't worry, we're going to stop here. So think about this in your head, or feel free to share it in the chat. But, what was the third option? What was the fifth? How many can you remember at all that came before development teams? Screen reader users don't have the ability to see all of the options or the content at one time. They are given one thing at a time. And this is what we mean by immediate context. So to think about a non-screen reader scenario, think about calling into a support line, right? Super fun. This is something we've all experienced, right? For X, press 1. For Y, press 2. For Z, press 3. To throw your phone out the window, press 4. You know what I mean? Like, how fun is that? It's super frustrating. What were you going to say, Susie?
No, that when I reach, when they put more than 3 or 4 options, it's like I have to cut, and call again just to hear
start
again
over.
options. Yeah, because I can't remember, right? And definitely that when we have this kind of navigation that is called sequential navigation, users must rely a lot on their memory. Actually, screen reader users have better memory than visual users, right? Because they exercise it all the time. They must remember, and they must remember a lot of information, context, the structure, what I read. I am going to find what I need after. There's a lot of things that we need to take into account. So that's what the intention of this exercise is, that you understand how it is for a screen reader user to navigate the menu. And that is mainly the question we have. How many good patterns for screen reader navigation exist? How many good patterns for screen reader navigation okay? I know that when we first met to create this talk, we were intended to talk to UXers, and we were really nervous, and we said, what is the best you can give to a UXer? And the answer was questions. That's your superpower. That's what you do. That's what you love. You're very good at making questions because you're very good at putting that curiosity on and researching and trying to generate new solutions and test them and iterate, question, and create better experiences and better realities. Okay, so when we replicate patterns from the visual world without considering that there's users that perceive and experience the world in such a different way as would be non-visual users, right? We find opportunities. And here we have one opportunity, that is, how can we achieve navigation that is recognition and not recall for screen reader users? Okay, we are not bringing you the solution because we're here to open this discussion, okay? because so far what we have been doing, not on purpose, but we have been doing is to take, in the best case scenario, to take a visual experience and make it accessible and then give it to the people with disabilities. And it's not like that. That is the best experience for a visual user or a person without disabilities. We need to start addressing people with disabilities on the creation of great experiences for them. Okay. So when we think about different realities, we are not only including, we are innovating. Okay, so this is our invitation to you. Thanks so much for being here, for giving this time to hear our thoughts. And we have one last invitation for you, that as we said at the start of this talk, accessibility is a design challenge. So let's accept this design challenge and let's change some lives. So thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Wow. What a great talk, ladies. And I was listening to you, and I was also thinking about now that we know all of this, how can we act on it? I'm not saying give me a checklist, okay? I'm not. I know that's the easy way. I'm not going to take it. But for me, as a product designer, that I have to design some product and I have no disability or minor impairments, how can I design something, a product, with all the responsibility that I have to reach out to those people living in different worlds, as you said before?
Well, use your superpowers, you know. Another superpower you have is empathy. So the first thing you have to do, look around, check if your environment is diverse, and if it's not, something's going wrong. Okay. And in order to make it more diverse, go out, go to the places where diverse people is. Okay. You can come to Dalat Comunidad. Here we have a lot of accessibility professionals with and without disabilities, and that are, because I always say that behind an accessibility professional, there's an activist, and we love talking about it. It's Estefania. We love talking about it. So if you approach someone and tell them, hey, how do you experience world? They will be happy to tell you. So that would be my first advice. Start connecting with diverse people.
Okay.
I would also add that I know this can be overwhelming. There just seems like there's so much to know, especially if this is new to you. Don't underestimate the small things that you can do to start making change. Like just bringing up the question in your team, like, what about accessibility? Starts the conversation. Just start, start talking about it, bringing it into your work.
Yeah, I love that idea of starting, because if you want to start creating patterns, if you want to start creating great experiences for people that, perceives reality in different ways, that's what all you have to do, start. Any great experience starts by just starting and then iterate, then let's talk about it, then let's have another meeting and talk about these patterns you came out with during your research, and let's validate that with hundreds and hundreds of users. That's what has been done so far to create great user experience for people without disabilities. We can do it from zero, from start, but we have to start.
Okay, perfect. So I wrote down like 3 bullet points for my checklist, not checklist. So find diversity, make community, and start the conversation with your colleagues, your team at your organization, and read, of course, and listen and try to empathize with people that are not like you. So thank you for that. So I was reading through the chat, and there was a big back and forth with diskette icon for saving, the
Yes,
classic, right?
that was the entire idea of that, is like to bring out that discussion, and I love that they saw it. So yeah, actually that was Pipi's idea to add the icon, because it was the very same um, discussion, but about what is now, the reality, the symbols, how that works. That is an idea of what happens when reality expires. And some things, well, they do their jobs on remaining the meaning, to remaining to have the same meaning through others, through other generations. But do they all? I don't think that, not even the majority of them does. So that were our point, like, do you want, are we willing to, you know, um, maintain a pattern that is not including everybody?
Yeah, exactly. There was a talk earlier talking about the magnifying glass. People living in rural regions, they didn't know what a magnifying glass was. So search, it was something that they didn't get. So it's not that far. That reality is not that far. It's not in Mars. It's here. It's around us. It's
And
closer than we think.
actually, that is something we discuss in accessibility a lot. Icons do help, do support information, do send messages, but they are not the message. So if you're going to use a button with a magnifying glass, that is not a label. Okay, search is the label, and it will be more understandable with the magnifier glass. It will be easier for people that doesn't speak the language on which is the search word written, and they will associate. But if you have users with cognitive disabilities, for example, it may not be, so clear than if you have both. If you have the icon and you have the label, so icons are not labels.
I want to say something crazy, but maybe with with the button for find or searching something, maybe now we use this a lupa. This is the
Yeah,
Yeah,
magnifier.
magnifying glass.
yes.
Yeah.
But
The loop.
maybe in the future we can use the word Google it, like we we Google
The verb. So
Google it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a company anymore, it's a verb. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I don't
true.
know, we are going to redesign this world, but and there's another crazy question that I have in my mind, that is, what happens if, for example, today, where we have like 1,000 UX designers at the table, and we say, well, now we will create a new convention, and all of them apply it. What's going to happen? Are we going to adopt it? What's going to happen? But yeah, I think that's the question always. What comes first?
Hi, everybody. So I just jumped in because there's a couple of questions in the chat on the stage, so I wanted to bring them from the audience. So one is, people usually think about eye impairment and body disabilities, but what about other disabilities such as migraine? Can you name a few that usually people do not think about?
Wow, what a great question. Yeah, when we were talking about disabilities and impairments, we actually said physical, intellectual, or emotional, right? Because now there's a lot of other, things that are considered within this concept, such as depression and anxiety and things like that. 100% that those are disabilities and must be respected as such. And I think that a lot of people is going through, and maybe if it's chronic, is what makes it a disability, versus being something temporal would make it an impairment. But whatever the case is, it is something that affects the user, and that definitely should be addressed when we design something.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
We
think
were just
there is a other talk in 24 horas. It's called like a research with drunk persons. So I think it's like a you understand the environment and the situation of the drunk person, and you can learn so much. So how works the interface for them.
Exactly. I'm bringing another question because it got also an upvote on the contact information page with the 2 phone number fields that you showed earlier. I saw what looked like a link for more information, perhaps help. My question is it better to have a link for help or additional information before or after?
If you're having a link to more information, it has to be after, because you are inviting your user to read and process the information on screen, and then they will decide if they need more information or not. So if you have a link with more information, or maybe a button like an accordion that will display more information, you put it after. But if it's information that is necessary for setting the context in order to make the user not to, to prevent the errors, let's say, that the users can make, it must be before.
Just searching for another question here, and maybe this one.
There is one more here. Peter, I have one. What other tools should we use beyond Construct Checker?
Yeah, so beyond Contrast Checker and Wave Tool and Microsoft PowerPoint and Word, what are other tools?
I think actually, I think that the next, we should do another talk, and this would be called, I don't know the content yet, but this will be called accessibility in design that is not color, so we can discuss all the other things we have to do, all the other responsibilities and tools and things that are not color. It is really pity, to reduce such an important, personally, I think it is the most important part of the process of building something that is designed to just measuring the color contrast. It's so much more, and actually in this talk, we're talking about creating patterns for a better user experience for users with disabilities. That is something that never, has never been done, or if it has, it's not even a pattern, it's not something you find all the time. Every time you enter a page, as a screen reader user, you must learn everything from scratch. So there's a lot of other tools. Don't rely on tools. Accessibility is one of the fields where automation or tools, developed tools are not superior or work better than people. It's if you're familiar with the WCAG, if you are in a diverse environment, if you ask people, you will have all the tools you need, to review your design. Of course, you have the guidelines, you have the WCAGs, you can go through them. You can go out to if you can Google it, or maybe PP, if you can do it and send it to the chat. There's this quick reference of the WCAGs that is called How to Meet WCAG 2.1. And in that, you have a filter. You will find it in your left. And in there, you can filter the WCAGs by design. And you will only read the ones that apply to design. And then you can have, your own, as you read it, you will find autocritic, or a better approach on how to create your product. So you can start by reading them and by making those tiny changes, and then go and try to test it and check if it's actually accessible. But you have so many things. You have labeling, you have this discussion we had with Stefania of our icon is a label. You have order, you have structure, you have a lot of things. Like for UX writers, there's a lot. There's going to be a lot in WCAG 3.0 that is going to be published in 2 more years, that we will be, merging COGA. That is another guideline that is more for cognitive disabilities and talks more about content, and now it will be part of the guidelines. And things are going to change dramatically in accessibility in the next years. We will be addressing not only mobile and web as it is right now, but Internet of Things, virtual reality, gamification. Everything's going to change. There's super exciting things to come.
Very good. I'll put on, thank you very much for that detailed answer. And I'll put another question up from Amanda Corbo. And just because it's very specifically answerable, she was asking that she wants to convince their company to invest in accessibility. And if there's a tool, a screen reader to show as a demo, like a simulator. And my quick answer to that is almost any kind of browser today will have an accessibility, will have a page reader built into it. So just type in your browser, whether that's mobile or on your desktop, and add in accessibility mode or screen reader mode, and you will get it. And although you mentioned earlier that it's not, so don't rely only on tools. However, I think that there's very few as dramatic demonstrations of why usability or why accessibility is needed than showing a website with a screen reader, because it is just so dramatically, it's something that people, management will obviously see that, okay, that's just wrong. We need to do something.
Yeah, I loved that question and that comment. Well, I wrote a blog post with 10 reasons of, or it actually are, don't say anyone, but they're like 10 ways to convince your managers to do it, but so you can use that. But yeah, and building accessibility, well, overlays and things like that are not right. Adding an overlay or another setting, it's not accessibility. Actually, if your client is from the United States, they are under the ADA, that is the American with Disabilities Act. That is what it provides the tools to people to demand, inaccessible sites, and you must be able to use it with your own assistive technology. Assistive technology is, as disability is part of the identity, assistive technology is like one part of your body, So you wouldn't leave a part of your body to use other, when you enter somewhere else, it's like going in a wheelchair and suddenly you're entering a building and they're telling you, no, don't enter with your chair. I will put you in this chair. And you will go like, no, you have to start all over again to know how to move and things like that. No, assistive technology must be of the choice of the user. And my product and my code must be this accessible platform where my user can move around using their own assistive technology. Because WCAGs are done based on standards. Those standards are done by the W3C, that is the same organization that creates other standards such as HTML. So they are connected, So if you use those lines, those standards, they will meet the other standards and it will work. So don't worry about that. If you have an accessible product, it can be used by any assistive technology. And on the other hand, you can convince your managers to start doing this. I will try to leave the link to these 10 reasons, but there's some things, and I think it is important, that are not up to other people, that we can change. Those little changes that we can make every day in our daily practice definitely impact people's life. So if there's some things that you can add without, having your managers or your clients telling you to do that, then do it. I think that is a good way to start.
That's an excellent sort of a point to transition. Hopefully, you ladies can stay on for the session QA. So I'll post the link for the attendees as well, because everyone who's listening, you can either go and continue with the ladies to be listening to the talk about accessibility, post your further questions. What I did is I already copied over the questions that were left here in the Q&A section. I already copied it over to the sessions. So I don't know, Estefan, if you will be accompanying. Okay, perfect.
I'm going with them. Yes.
Great.